Hey everyone, welcome back to Papa's Workshop. Well, I've been working on a boom design for the CNC machine now for quite a while. And over the years, I've actually made a number of different boom arms for different purposes. Well, I think I finally came up with the perfect boom arm that is lightweight, it's very strong, it supports the hoses extremely well, and it moves very easily with the CNC machine. So today I want to show you exactly how I designed it, built it, and put it to work. At the end of the video, I'm going to test it out and show you just how easy it works on the full range of motion with the CNC machine. Here's a quick look at the other side of the boom arm before we start the design process. I actually started this project several months ago and was kicking around some ideas, and this design I'm actually going to discard, but I do like parts of it. I like the overall outside shape, so this I'm going to go ahead and drag down into the work area. The first thing that I need to change are these slots. Now these slots I had just temporarily put in at a 1/2 inch, but when I measured the plywood, it's actually 0.47 of an inch. So I'm going to use the node editing mode and cut the vector and put in the correct size. I'm also going to extend these longer and make them 2.5 inches long by the 0.47 of an inch. I'm also going to remove the dog bones, at least temporarily, while I make these adjustments. Now I use the selection tool and highlight the slot. That should be the only thing that's highlighted. And now with that highlighted, I'll come up to this icon. And this way I can adjust the size. Now I want to make sure that this link on the XY is not checked, because I'm changing the size and it's not going to be proportional. The x-axis is going to be 2.5 inches, and on the y-axis the thickness of the plywood was 0.47 inch, and I'm going to make it 0.475. Give just a little bit of a tolerance. And with that put in, then I'll just hit apply. And I'll do the same exact thing for the bottom slot. When I added the link to make this slot 2.5 inches, you can see part of it went to the left and of course part of it went to the right. I can come up to this icon and I can actually move it over. On the x-axis, I can actually put in 0 and just hit apply, and that's going to move it directly to that edge. The next problem is this section right here. When I made the slot smaller, there's a little gap from that outer edge to the new slot. And I need to be able to join those two together into one vector. I'm using the extend vector tool to be able to do just that. I'll highlight the first line, click on the second line, and it will join those two together. I'll repeat this process now for each of the slots to be able to join it back together into one vector. And now to double check it, I'm going to go back to the selection tool and highlight it, and you can see everything is highlighted and it's all one vector. The next item that I want to put in is a slot that I can put the hose through, and I want to be able to have that 2 inches by 5 inches. As far as the placement of this slot, I want to put it on the center on the y-axis, and I'm going to slide it over right about in this area. I don't want these sharp corners, so I can come over to the fillet tool, select that, and select the normal fillet, and since this is 2 inches, I'm going to put in 1 inch for the radius, and then I will come over and select each of the corners, and that will make a nice round end. That will be perfect. That way the hose will be able to slip right into that area. While I'm in the fillet mode, I want to go ahead and put the dog bones back in. Now I'm going to be using an 1/8 inch bit to be able to cut this out. So I can actually put in the 0.125 divided by 2 and hit equals, and it will give me the radius. So now I'll just put in the dog bones on each of these slots. So that just gives you a different way to be able to enter in the actual size that you need, which is the actual 0.0625. The next thing I want to do is put in these slots that will actually hold the hose itself. And I'm not sure exactly where I want them. So I'm using the guidelines just to kind of get an idea of the placement. And then I'll take these little slots and slide them over and put them right on the guidelines once I'm happy with the placement and the location of these slots. Now I have 2, but I also put a third one here in the middle, And I'm thinking that may be a good place to be able to hang the hose when I'm finished, or I just may need it to have some extra support to be able to support that hose near the end. I don't know exactly, but I'm going to go ahead and put this in for whatever reason. Oh, and by the way, the slot is going to be 0.475 by 2.5 inches. And I had used a guideline just to be able to move it back and forth until I was happy with where I think they need to be. Only time will tell and actually using it in the shop. But I have the slots in now. I'm going back and putting in the dog bones, and I won't need these guidelines any longer. But I am going to bring in some brand new guidelines. I want to be able to set this up so I can cut out these center holes just to make this boom lighter. And I can slide these guidelines over to where I want them. Once I have the placement the way I like it, then I can actually draw the box to be able to cut out. And I think what I'm doing is coming down about an inch from the top, an inch up from the bottom. And this is interesting too. Guidelines you can put in at an angle. And you can see right there, I just changed the angle to a 4-degree. The guideline was able to adjust to that. And then I can put that guideline in place right parallel to the bottom edge of the boom. Once I'm happy with all of the different guidelines and what that little square is going to look like, then I can use the line tool and just outline using the guidelines and have my slot. And this is just going to cut out a lot of the excess weight on this boom. So here's the openings actually into the boom itself and the guidelines removed. Now again, I don't like the sharp edges, so it's back over to the fillet tool, and this time I think I'm going to use a 1/2 inch radius to be able to put these fillets in. And of course this is going to be the normal fillet, and then I'll just come and click on each of the corners to put the radius in. I think that looks a whole lot better. Now this looks a whole lot different from the original, but I don't need the original anymore, so I can just get rid of it. I took the next few minutes just to make the rest of the components using the exact same procedure that I had done making the boom itself. And I need to be able to check the layout. The layout of the material was originally 15 inches. Well, I didn't have a 15-inch piece. I had a 12.5-inch piece of material. So I had to rearrange everything to be able to get it to fit into that space. Now I'm setting up the toolpaths. I want to be able to cut out all of these inside openings first. Now I can't cut out the insides yet where the parts are because it'll just fall out. So I'm cutting out this as the first toolpath with my 1/8 inch bit. And of course I'm going to start on the surface. I'm going to cut down the thickness of the plywood, which is the 0.475. I'm doing this in 4 passes, cutting this on the inside, and I did use the tabs to be able to have this cut out. Once I'm happy with that, I'll change the name, and this is going to be the first toolpath that I'm cutting. Now there's going to be a total of 4 toolpaths that I'm setting up to cut this out. So at this point I can hit calculate, and you can see exactly what the first toolpath is going to look like. Because I have some of the parts inside this waste material on this boom, I need to cut the outside of these parts. The only real change that I need to make to the toolpath, instead of cutting on the inside, I'm going to be cutting on the outside. Everything else is going to be exactly the same. So I'm going to go through this real quickly, and then I'm going to move to the third toolpath. The third toolpath cuts out everything else on the inside, so that'll finish out the boom itself. This would have been a lot easier if the parts inside of that waste area on the boom could have been someplace else. But either way, it doesn't take a whole lot of extra time. Now with this completed, I can now click on each of the parts and cut the outside of the remaining parts. This is going to be the fourth and the final toolpath that I'll need to be able to cut. So I'm just going to highlight all of these different components. And as far as the toolpath, it's going to be exactly the same. I'm going to come up to the profile toolpath, select that, and again, most everything is the same. I do need to change the passes back to the fourth, and instead of on the inside, it's going to be cut on the outside. So with everything else the same, I'm just going to hit calculate, and you can see now all 4 of the toolpaths and how it's going to look when it gets cut out, and you can see the tabs in place. So at this point, everything is done, and we need to be able to save the toolpath. And to do that, I'm going to click this on the toolpath. It highlights all 4 of them, and then I can go to this icon for the saving of the toolpath, and you will see all 4 toolpaths here. And this is in the order that I want to be able to cut these out. Because I'm using the same bit, I can save all these toolpaths into one file, and I'll save them onto my thumb drive. That way I don't keep a whole bunch of extra files on the computer, and it won't slow down the computer. That's the process that I use, and it works extremely well. And all the files are stored and organized on the thumb drive. At this point, it's time to head to the shop, and let's get this set up on the machine and cut out. At this point, the plywood is secured onto the wasteboard. I've homed the machine, and I've moved the bit right over to this location. This is going to be my work position 0 location. And you can see it's right down at the bottom left-hand corner. I'm using that pencil line as my reference point. With that done, I can click on Set 0, and that establishes the 0 work position. Now it's time to load the G-code file. So I go down and go to the file for my boom arm, and then click on the G-code file that I had just created and load it in. And at this point, you can see the graphic representation of what it's going to do. I don't know if I can get this much bigger or not, so let me open this up so that you can see the actual toolpaths and how it's going to run. And this gives me the opportunity to verify that, yes, I did select the correct file. So at this point, I'm ready just to connect the vacuum system to the CNC machine and hit Run Job. And it's going to start cutting out the first toolpath, and then move to the second toolpath and just move right through. Very seamless. I don't have to do anything else other than watch, observe, and make sure that it's running smoothly. And this is cutting out absolutely flawlessly. Now this plywood, I actually cut it a little bit longer than the 48 inches, just to give me a little bit extra room for the clamps. As far as the bit, I used an 1/8 inch straight bit to cut this project out. I probably could have used a 1/4 inch bit and had equally amount of success, but I wanted to use this bit to be able to get some of the smaller details in and to have smaller dog bone fillets. And this is cutting absolutely beautiful. There's very, very little tear out, and at this point, it looks excellent. I think I'm going to have very, very little sanding to be able to clean up this project when it comes off the CNC machine. At this point, we have begun cutting the 4th toolpath. One of the things that I want to show you up close is what it looks like when you use the ramp feature. Now it starts right at the surface, and then it slowly cuts down at that angle to be able to get to the full depth on your first path. That's something that people typically don't show you, and I think it's important to see. And that helps to be able to put less stress on the bit itself. I wanted to zoom in real close so you could actually see these cut lines. There's virtually no tear out on this plywood. So I'm very impressed with using just a simple straight bit to be able to cut this out. I'm actually excited to be able to get this project done because I've been thinking about this for quite some time, and it's now finally coming to reality. At this point, the machine is finished. It's coming back to its home position, and I'm going to take it off of the surface. Now these clamps have worked out extremely well, and quite frankly, with the cost of the blue tape now, where it's costing $9 per roll, I'm using the clamps more and more to be able to hold the projects down, along with this little inexpensive, cheap scrap foam as an auxiliary wasteboard. Now this is a 2-inch PVC Schedule 40 pipe, and I'm using this as the main mechanism to be able to create the hinge for this boom to be able to swing left and right over the CNC machine. And I set it up to the length that I wanted to be able to cut it, put the stop onto the miter gauge, and then I can just rotate this around and very easily and safely cut it. And the cut is very, very clean. I don't need to do any additional prep. But as far as the project itself, yeah, I'll need to do a little bit of sanding just to get away from the little burrs that existed. And quite frankly, it took very little sanding to be able to clean this up. That 1/8 inch straight bit did an amazing job on this plywood. And the other part of the sanding is I just want to be able to very lightly round over these edges so they're just not quite as sharp. And that's a very quick process with this sandpaper. Now with the sanding done, let's go ahead and get everything assembled. These parts, no glue required. Just slip them in and that's going to be fine. I'm going to put this part in up here and that's going to be able to hold the hose. The third one, I'm not sure how I'm going to use it yet. Now these parts on the end, which is part of the hinge mechanism itself, yes, they're going to require the glue. But I want to test fit just to make sure that they fit good and snug, and that is absolutely amazing. So I'll take these off, add a little bit of glue, and put them back on. But that works perfect. The clearances and the tolerance that I used worked out extremely well for this. Now this is a little ring that goes back into the PVC pipe. And that's going to create the spacer that I need because this is all going to sit on a 3/4 inch piece of pipe. Like I said, it's a nice snug fit and that's what I wanted. So this worked out extremely well. I just got to be able to line it up where it's straight and then it slips in. The last part that I have that's on the table is just a great big washer. And I'll show you how I use that in a moment. But this part now, again, with very close tolerances, that 2-inch piece of pipe fits into this and it slides in perfect. This is exactly what I want. So now let's test it out. I'm using a 3/4 inch pipe clamp. Yeah, that's right. Nothing more than a pipe clamp that's set up for your 3/4 inch pipe. I can clamp that to the table and I can position anywhere that I need. And after a little bit of testing, it actually worked better on the back rear of the machine right in the center. I'm using a simple hose clamp to be able to create the stop so that the boom arm will not slide down. I think this is a very simple solution that works great. It doesn't have to be complicated. Next, I'll just simply drop on this big washer. That's really all it is. That gives something for the boom arm itself to be able to slide on. Now these inside rings that's in the PVC, quite frankly, they don't need to be glued in. And there's an easier way to put this on. I'm doing this the hard way right now, but still in all, it just slips in and comes right down to that big washer. I quickly realized that this short pipe clamp, which is a 3-foot pipe clamp, is way too short. This is not going to work. But as far as the operation and how the boom arm moves, yeah, that worked out really well. So how easy is it to move this boom arm? Well, all you need to do is loosen the clamp and slip it off of the table and you can move it anywhere that you want. So if you had more than one CNC machine, you could do this too. You could just move it to any place in the shop. Quite frankly, you could even put it over your workbench and use it with your sanders. So this is a great versatile boom arm that you can use for many different applications in the shop. Before I change this over to the longer pipe, I want to see just how easy it is to be able to connect a hose to this boom. First, the hose slips very easily through that slot, drops down onto that little hook, and the hose is supported very well. I could connect the other end over to the CNC machine, but you can immediately see the problem and why this pipe is way too short. Because this hose is not acceptable. I really would not want it to be this low. Okay, enough playing around. Went back over to my pipe clamps and grabbed one that's 4 feet long, brought it over to the table. Same thing, just as easy. It clamps onto the table, and then I can just remove the boom from the little short pipe. And because it's so lightweight, it just lifts off very easily. Now you saw that little ring on the inside? Yeah, that's okay. I'm going to show you an easier way to install that, and still, no, I don't think I need any glue to be able to hold it in permanently. I'll remove my big washer and remove the hose clamp, and I'll put this hose clamp onto the much taller 4-foot clamp, and I'll tighten it in position. I can adjust the final height here in just a moment. And then I'll put on the big ring, drop it down into place, and with that washer in place, I'll put on that little small ring. Now it's going to be much easier to install this. I can just slip this over, drop it down, and slip the top of the pipe through that top ring. And see how easy it drops in on the bottom? That worked out extremely well. Now at this point, I can tighten up the clamp. I can actually move this boom just a little bit higher, but quite frankly, it's getting pretty close to the ceiling. And now I'll just take this 3-foot clamp and get it out of the way. So here's a look at the completed setup with the boom in place, the hose put onto the router. But does it work? Let's take a look. I'm going to actually home the machine and bring it back to this far back corner with the hose attached. With my old setup with a coat hanger hanging from the ceiling, yeah, I had to be able to take the hose off to be able to home the machine. It really did not go to the very back corner very easily. But with the boom, you can see as it homes that the boom arm itself moves, and this, I'm very happy with this. So let's see what happens once it gets to that home position. You can see the boom arm moving. Okay, so let's put it through the paces. Let's move it all the way over to the left-hand rear corner, and the boom is following very easily. So that's actually 1,300 millimeters that it just moved. I'm going to take it all the way to the front. Again, that's 1,300 millimeters to the front edge of this CNC machine. And you can see how the hose is still working real well. Now I'll move it over to the far right corner on the front. And this gives me a 1,300 millimeter movement all the way around. And this is the far reaches of the CNC machine, and the boom arm is working perfectly. So I'm real happy with this. Now just for a little simple test, let's bring it over to the center of the CNC machine. And the boom, yeah, it's following. It's doing exactly what it needs to do. So anywhere on the CNC machine is going to work. So here's the final setup. I have all 3 of these little hooks in place to support the hose. The boom itself moves extremely easy. And then as we follow the hose down to the router, you can see that the hose has plenty of room to be able to move, and it's not laying basically on top of the router table. Well, I hope this video was useful today. This boom arm is going to be fantastic in the shop. I think I may make another one that will fit over on the workbench that I can use with a sander and get the hoses off the floor. But if you like this video, by all means, give me a thumbs up, and hey, don't forget, hit that subscribe button right down there below and that bell notification to be able to help me out. It really does help the channel to be able to spread out to a lot larger audience. Now, if you like this video, now you might want to take a look at this design. Now, this was patterned after the Wobbly design, and I decided to make my own and create my own files to be able to make this. And I have that video right up here that you can take a look at. So I look forward to seeing each and every one of you in the next video, whatever that may be. So for now, bye-bye everyone. See you real soon.